Today I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to practice mitered corners. And you can see right here I've got 4 mitered corners. And what these are going to end up being is placemats. I thought this was a nice color combination because it would go through the holidays and really through Valentine's Day. So this is what I'm using. This is a collection from Moda, and here's the name of it. I'll zoom in on it so that you can really see it. They are available on my website, so don't forget to go out there and grab those if you'd like to make this. And what I'm gonna do is give you the complete instructions on how to make one of these. So what you do is you start out with one full jelly roll, all right? And what I want you to do is I want you to take your jelly roll and I want you to separate it into piles of 13 strips. Now they can be all reds, they can be all of the tans, doesn't matter, that's completely up to you. But what you're gonna do is you're gonna separate it into 3 piles of 13. So once you've separated it into 3 piles of 13, you're gonna pick 5 of them. And from those 5, what you're going to do is sew them together. Sew the 5 together by the width of the fabric. So you're gonna end up with a strip that's about 40 inches long. So once you've got your strip all sewn together, and remember, it's going to be 5 strips of fabric by the width of the jelly roll or whatever 2.5 inch strip you have. You're gonna cut your piece into 2 10.5 by 16 inch rectangles. So you'll end up with 2 of these for every set you make. So we're gonna make a total of 6 here. So the next thing that you need to do is find your centers. Now the easiest way to find your center is just to fold it in half and just mark your center. I used a Frixion pen so that I could see it, or you can always place a pin in it. Once you've done that, you're gonna grab your extra strips and you need to cut them in half. Okay, so here are my 2 halves. And you're gonna mark your center again, and again, just very simply folding it in half, lining it up, and then putting a pin in to mark it. All right, the next thing that we need to do is we need to make a reference point on these strips, because what we're going to be doing is stopping 1/4 inch before we reach the end. Now on this, and I'll try to zoom in on it, I have marked 1/4 inch down and 1/4 inch in so that I've got this little X marks your spot. Now how I did that was I just took my 2.5 by 18.5 inch Creative Grids ruler, I laid it down and I just made a mark. Then I rotated it, made a mark here and here, went all the way around, did it on all 4 corners so that I have a reference point. The next thing that we're going to do is put reference points on these. So I'm gonna set this aside for a second. When we go to do this, what we are going to be doing is we are going to be sewing from one end to the other, but we're starting and stopping 1/4 inch before the edge. We know that this piece is 16 inches long, half of 16 is 8, minus 1/4, because we've got to stop 1/4 in. So we're gonna measure from our center point out 7 3/4 and make a mark. Then we're gonna measure from the center out to 7 3/4 and make another mark. So that's the next thing I'm gonna do. So I'm just gonna take my ruler, I'm gonna lay it down, and I'm gonna come all the way up to 7 3/4. Whoops, right here. Okay, that's where I need to stop. Then I'm gonna slide my fabric down. I'm gonna put my ruler at 7 3/4. And again, I'm just gonna mark my spot. I'm gonna do that on both the top and the bottom. And then I'm going to sew, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to attach these. I'm going to put these right sides together, matching my center pins, pin it down. Then I'm going to take this out And I'm gonna grab another pin. I'm gonna go in and then pick this up. And now I'm matching right on that X marks the spot. Straighten it up and pin it down. I'll stick a pin in the middle here. I'm gonna do the same thing on this side, then I'm gonna sew them down. I'll come back once I've sewn them down so that you can see exactly how I went about doing it and what it looks like once it's sewn down. So I'll be back in just a second. I've gotten my two sides attached. So now I need to do these two sides. So I'm gonna do the exact same thing that I did on these. I took my two strips, I found my center on both of them, and then I'm going to remeasure this piece, and it is, hopefully you can see, it is, let's see, where are we at? We are now at 10 inches. So half of 10 is 5, minus a quarter is 4 3/4. So I'm gonna measure 4 3/4 out from this point to here. So I'm going to I'm gonna grab my two end pieces and my ruler and my red pen. I'm gonna measure out from the center point 4 3/4 on both sides. So here we are again, and I'm at 4 3/4. All right, so now I've got my two marks here. Do the same thing on the second piece, and then I'm just going to attach them exactly the way I did the last one. I'm gonna match up my centers first. So here's my match. And I'm actually going to sew, I think it's easiest to sew on this side. So I'm gonna take my pin and I'm going to match it up so that I am at 4 3/4. And look, I've matched. Oh, I wanna go on this side, sorry. So I'm matching those. I'm gonna do the same thing down here, sticking my pin in from this side first to make sure I'm matching, and I am matching. So now I can just pin it down. I'm gonna sew this, and then I'm gonna come back and we'll go over to the pressing table and I'll show you how I'm gonna press it, how I'm gonna press the borders, and then I'm gonna show you how we make our 45°. I'll be right back. I'm gonna try and show you really close up where I'm sewing. So hopefully you can see that right here is my seam from the long end. So I need to start right here when I go to sew across the two ends. So I'm gonna put my needle down. I'm gonna hold this so that I can make sure, yep, and I'm right in there. I'm gonna do a back stitch, and then I'm gonna go ahead and stitch forward. Now, when I get to this end, I'm going to stop when I get to right here where the seams meet. I'm gonna stop right there. So I'm just gonna keep right on sewing, making certain that my pieces are lined up. And then I'm going to slow right down so that I can get right in there. And there I am. So now I'm going to back up. And that's all there is to it. I'm going to sew the other side and then we'll meet over at the pressing station. All right, I've got all 4 sides attached. So now what I'm going to do is start by setting my seam first. on all 4 sides. Just quickly going through getting those seams set. This only takes a minute to do. One more. All right, my seams are all set. So the next thing I'm going to do is just take my iron and I'm just going to press the seams so that they go out to the borders, okay? And what I'm doing when I get to the corners here is I'm just going up to the corner and then pushing the iron a little bit farther away. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the sides. Exact same thing, just pressing it away from the placemat. Now I'm going to rotate it. I'm going to do that on the other 2 sides. All right, one more. Alrighty, next step is I'm going to grab one of my creative grid rulers, and I'm also grabbing my friction pen, and it's my red one. And the ruler that I'm using is my Creative Grids 4.5 square. This one is the perfect size for this. It really does help. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my placemat. I'm going to try to get this right in the center of the screen for you so that you can see. And I'm going to fold this piece back. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it this end. I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to make my 2 pieces that are right next to each other. These 2 pieces, I'm going to have them match. I'm going to match them right up. Then I'm holding this right here. And then I'm going to take and pick it up. And I'm going to manipulate those 2 seams that I just pressed towards the border together, just like this. And if you want to stick a pin in there, you go right ahead. That's absolutely fine. The reason why we're doing this, I'm going to draw on my stitches, is we need to see these stitches right here because they need to match up to the very end or beginning of my mitered corner. So next thing that I'm going to do is holding my finger right there, I'm just going to move this around to the point that I have my 2 borders matching together all the way. And they are. You can see they match here too. There, you can't see the bottom piece. Next thing I'm going to do is take my 4.5 inch ruler and I'm placing it on the bottom of my 2.5 inch strip so that it's nice and straight. I'm going to just inch it down a little bit so that my point right here is matched up with my stitches right here. All right, and it's matched. This needs to be straight, which it is. Then I'm just going to draw a line. And I'm going to draw a line directly from my stitches before to the very end. I'm going to leave this sitting right there. I'm going to grab a couple of pins and I'm just going to carefully hold it in place and pin it. Hold it in place and pin it. I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. So I'll do one more for you so that you can see it. I'm laying my placemat flat. Okay. I'm going to pick up these 2 corners so that I've got a hold of these, and I'm going to lay this right out. I'm going to turn it over. Sorry. Look, here we go. Turn it over. All right. So now, I'm going to get it this way a little bit better. I have formed a triangle really. Here's my placemat. If it was square, it would be a triangle. But because it's not square, we're not going to get one. And so I've done that stage. Now I'm going to line these up. Now remember, I need to make sure that I've pulled this fabric away, and that's just so that these ends or the borders line up properly. So here we go. I'm going to carefully fold this over so that I stay nice and lined up. Right here is the end of my stitching. All right, I'm going to line up my ruler, and again, this is my Creative Grids 4.5-inch square ruler. It's one of those ones that really seem to come in handy quite a bit. And then I'm just going to draw my line. That's my stitching line. I'm going to be stitching right on that line. Put a pin in and pull it away, put another pin in. Right? So when I go to stitch this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right here with my needle down, and I'm going to stitch all the way out to here. I'll back stitch here and here, and I'll be back in just a minute to show you. First thing I did was I engaged my needle down function. The next thing I'm going to do is just put this right underneath the needle, and I'm making certain that everything is folded back the way I showed you. And then I'm going to just lower my presser foot. Sorry for my arm in the way. And I'm going to engage my needle down, and I'm right there on the line. I'm going to take 2 stitches, and then I'm going to back stitch. And again, well, if I go like this, maybe you can see. All right, now I'm just going to sew right on my line, right down to the end. And then I will again back stitch at the very end. So here we go. And then back stitch. And one of my 4 mitered corners is done. I'm going to pull it out and I'll show you what it looks like. Let me clip my threads. Just a second. All right. So now, if I take out my 2 pins, here is my mitered corner. See? Doesn't that look nice? So I'm going to do my other 3, and then I'll be back and show you exactly what it looks like once I've pressed it. All right, I've gotten all 4 of my corners sewn. Hopefully you can see at least a couple of them. So now what I'm going to do is just very carefully, well, not carefully, I'm just going to press my corners. And what's going to happen is the fabric will lay the way it wants to. And that's it. Then I'm ready to trim. I don't trim these ends until it's all done. I leave them on there only because if I've got to take it out, I need that additional fabric there. Now you can see on one of these corners, this one right here. See right here, I stitched over the 1/4 inch. So I'm going to open this back up again, and I'm going to get my seam ripper, and I'm just going to clip that 1 thread that I went over. And remember, I back stitched. So I've just got that 1 thread, if I can get a hold of it, that I went over. I'm going to take that thread out, which, okay, now it's out. And then I'm going to turn it around, and now it will press nicer. So that's all fixed. So now that it is completed, you can see most of it. Let's see if I turn it this way. There, now you can see the whole thing. Now that that's completed and it's laying nice and flat, and I like my mitered corners, I'm going to trim these off, and then it's time to go put it on the long arm, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm quilting it. hopefully you can see my entire placemat in this. You can see I just did this swirly design. This is one of Nancy Hackey's designs, and I'll put a link below to the name of it so that you can get it if you want. It is an edge-to-edge pattern, and I just used one piece of it, one block of it, and then I drew the double stitching around the outside. And I purposely did do square stitching so it formed the rectangle. Here's the front side. I got thread still hanging in places. So here's the front side of it. I have prepared my binding. It's right here. What I'm going to do though is I'm going to go against something that I normally do. Normally I attach the binding to the front, flip it around to the back, and hand stitch it. These are placemats, so I am actually going to attach the batting. I'm going to actually attach the binding to the wrong side, flip it over, and top stitch it down to the front side, so that I'm not going to actually be doing any hand sewing with this. I want to get them done and get them on the table, and I thought this is the best way to do it. So I'm going to be attaching the binding to the back side of it, flipping it around, and then top stitching it down. I'll come back and show you what it looks like once it's all done. Here is my completed placemat. So I've got 5 more to do, so I'm going to get those done. And you can see it was pretty easy to do, I think. It just was top stitched all the way around. If you'd like to see how I go about stitching binding down on the machine versus by hand, I do have a video to that, and I will link it below so that you can go take a look at it. But here's my finished placemat. Here it is on the front, and then here it is on the back. A couple threads still to clip, obviously. I'll get that done. And I think they went together really good, and I think it's a great use of a jelly roll. So there you go. Thanks so much for sticking around with me all the way to the end and for seeing how I make placemats with mitered corners out of a jelly roll. If you'd like your very own jelly roll, pop on over to my website. You'll be able to find them there. And if you're not already a part of our Facebook group, please do think about joining us. We are at Facebook, Margaret Lewin Quilting. See you again really soon. Thank you.